Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really interesting piece, a pasted text, actually, that predicts quite a major shift in society.
That's right. It's all about writing and how AI might fundamentally change who can do it well and maybe even how we think.
Exactly. So the core question is, what happens long term when AI writing tools are just everywhere? What does that do to our skills, our communication?
It's a big question. The piece dives right in.
Okay, so what's the headline prediction? The author doesn't really hold back, do they?
No, not at all. The main idea is that in, say, a couple of decades, the number of people who can genuinely write proficiently could drastically decrease.
Drastically. Wow. And why is that? What's the thinking?
Well, the author really hammers home that good writing requires clear thinking. And let's face it, clear thinking is hard work.
Yeah, definitely.
And they argue this isn't just, an abstract problem. We see issues even in prestigious fields. Think about plagiarism cases. Sometimes for text that seems pretty basic on the surface, it shows the struggle is real.
Right. And the piece makes a good point that before AI got this good, there was immense pressure, wasn't there? If your job required writing.
You just had to learn. Or, well, the alternatives weren't great. Hiring someone, which costs money, or, plagiarizing, which has obvious ethical
So
problems.
there was this built-in need to develop this skill.
Exactly. But now AI is presented as this escape valve. That's the term the author uses.
Escape valve. I like that. So for school essays, work emails, whatever.
There's now this super convenient tool readily available. It basically takes away a lot of that pressure to struggle through the writing process yourself to practice and get better.
And the consequence of that, according to the author, is this potential future divide.
Yes, a society split between the rights people who still write well, maybe because they enjoy it or need it for specialized work, and the write-nots.
The right not. So not necessarily illiterate, but people who just default to AI for almost anything substantial.
Pretty much. The idea is that the sort of middle ground, people who could write adequately, even if not brilliantly, might shrink considerably.
Hmm. Okay, so he also brings up an analogy, right? Something about blacksmiths.
Yeah, the blacksmith analogy. Technology makes a skill less necessary, like blacksmithing after the Industrial Revolution. But the author argues writing is different.
How so? Why isn't it just another skill we're outsourcing?
Because of the claimed link between writing and thinking, this is where it gets, I think, really critical.
Okay, there's a quote in there. Leslie Lamport.
That's the one. If you're thinking without writing, you only think you're thinking.
That's powerful. So the argument is writing isn't just putting thoughts on paper.
It's actually part of the thinking process itself. It's how we structure complex ideas, how we refine them, how we achieve clarity.
So if we lose the widespread ability or even the habit of writing,
We might be losing a crucial tool for deep, rigorous thought. This leads to the author's ultimate concern: a society potentially divided into thinks and think-nots.
wow. So not just writes and write nots, but thinks and think nots. That's quite a leap.
It is, but it follows logically from that premise about writing being essential for thinking.
There was another analogy, too, about physical strength.
Yes, the strength training analogy. The idea is that physical strength used to be a byproduct of many jobs, right? Farming, construction.
Sure.
But now, for many people, if you want to be physically strong, you have to consciously decide to work out. It requires deliberate effort.
Okay, I see where this is going.
The author suggests that strong thinking skills developed through the effortful process of writing might become similar, not something developed automatically through everyday tasks, but something you have to deliberately pursue.
So it becomes a choice rather than a widely distributed ability.
Exactly, a conscious choice to cultivate that kind of thinking muscle, maybe because fewer and fewer situations will demand it organically if AI is always there.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the core argument we're looking at is that leaning heavily on AI for writing might not just change how we communicate.
But it could actually impact our cognitive abilities, potentially leading to a sort of society-wide dip in critical thinking capacity.
It definitely gives you pause. It makes you think about all those little writing tasks you do, maybe without even noticing. Quick emails, notes, planning documents. If you start handing those over to AI more and more, what happens to the thinking behind them? What's potentially lost in that translation or that delegation? Something to mull over, for sure.